I'm Rolly Marks. This is the Israel Brief brought to you by Lay of the Land. Shavua Tov, it's a big news day, so I'm going to jump straight into it. Very, very dramatic scenes underway in the Knesset as the voting is underway on the reasonableness law in its current iteration. Now, the voting is expected to take about 3 hours. The opposition parties are boycotting the voting. They say that any compromise, any paths to reach compromise have been roundly ignored by the coalition. We do know that Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister, has also tried to work towards compromise, and that there are several MKs frantically trying to reach compromise, which has been roundly rejected by Itamar Ben-Gvir, Yariv Levin, with Ben-Gvir reported to be threatening to topple the coalition government. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's take a look at what has transpired, at least in the last 48 hours. Starting last Wednesday, anti-judicial overhaul protesters began a march from Tel Aviv, culminating in a protest outside the Knesset on Saturday night. At least 72,000 Israelis of all ages, all persuasions, religious, secular, whole families, marched peacefully in the blazing sun over rough terrain as a final effort to tell the government, please do not go through with these reforms as they currently are drafted. Now, the reasonableness law, which is currently under vote, would remove judicial scrutiny from decisions that the government would make. And given that there are some very extreme elements in the government, there is huge concerns about the nature of some of these decisions. Now, the culmination of this march was in a protest outside the Knesset on Saturday night, and there were nationwide protests. Yesterday morning, very, very moving images of both pro-reforms and anti-reform protesters gathering at the Kotel, the Western Wall, to pray, and in a show of unity formed a human chain from the Kotel to the Knesset. Last night, there were rallies both pro and against the reforms. Ironically, those pro the reforms took place on Kaplan Street in Tel Aviv, and those anti the reforms took place in Jerusalem outside the Knesset. Very, very moving to see some of the images coming in of protesters either descending or ascending the very steep escalator at Jerusalem's train station, reaching out to each other and saying, no matter that we disagree, you are my brother and I love you, which is some advice, quite frankly, those in power here could do with. It's normally not in my nature, in my remit, to make a biased statement, but the situation here in Israel is of a frantic imploring of so many parties to please not push this bill through in its current iteration. Now, warnings have come over the last 48 hours from the top of the echelon of the Israeli Air Force and the military, saying that Israel's very existence could be imperiled because of the effect that this could have on our military. The Histadrut chairman just a short while ago with the business union leader saying that the government is ignoring the concerns of citizens across this country and that there needs to be a compromise. The president, Isaac Herzog, just landing last night from his trip to the United States, first visiting Prime Minister Netanyahu in hospital. More about that in a couple of minutes, but saying we are now in a state of emergency. We need to go to compromise. We need to go to negotiations. former Prime Minister, or former President rather, Ruvi Rivlin, joining the protests outside the Knesset last night, saying that this is the darkest moment for the state of Israel. Likud ministers appealing to Prime Minister Netanyahu, please go to compromise. Even Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich just a short while ago saying, please, let's go towards some kind of compromise. This has been roundly rejected by Yariv Levin, the Justice Minister, and Itamar Ben-Gvir, who threatened to topple the government. But we are really in a state of crisis for the state of Israel, and it has already impacted on the shekel and on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, which has seen a marked fall in the value of the shekel and the price of stocks. Where this is going is anyone's guess, but everybody is hoping for some kind of last-minute miracle. In other news, Prime Minister Netanyahu was released from hospital this morning following an operation to place a pacemaker in his heart. Now, last week we brought you the news that the Prime Minister was rushed to hospital following news that he was dehydrated. However, the fact that he was released from hospital with a heart monitor had many asking questions. Was it really dehydration? And now we know that there was an issue and the Prime Minister was fitted with a pacemaker. He has thanked everybody for their well wishes and has said he is feeling fine. President Biden also, in an attempt to get a widespread consensus reached, phoned Prime Minister Netanyahu last night and appealed to him, do not rush through these overhauls, work towards negotiations. Clearly, we can see the effect of the president's wishes or the president's advice not being heeded today in the Knesset. And lastly, firefighting efforts by Israel to assist Greece with wildfires has come to an end. The operation was hugely successful, and in a ceremony, the authorities in Greece thanked Israel for always standing by them and for operations to try and help fight inclement wildfires. Now, Israel had sent a large military Rhino aeroplane firefighting battalions and 2 El-Al firefighting planes. Israel has said, we will always stand by Greece, especially when they battle these wildfires, as they have stood with the state of Israel. Now, that brings me to the end of today's edition of the Israel Brief. Many of us in this country are praying for a miracle. We are praying for compromise. We are praying for the preservation of the values and the democratic nature of this country. And we are praying for an end and a healing across the divides. We pray that our leaders are listening. Don't forget to check out our website at www.layoftheland.online, our Facebook page at Lottel's site, our YouTube community at The Israel Brief, and we're on Twitter or X or whatever it's called today at Lay of the Land 5. I'm Rolene Marks. This is The Israel Brief, and I'll join you again tomorrow.